Hi, I'm Sam, and it's the day after yesterday's video. My dog's just down here stirring. Bless her. She's so close to the end now, it's heartbreaking. Absolutely heartbreaking, but that's part of owning a dog. I've buried 4 dogs over the last 8 years. She was my first, nearly 18 years ago, and she's outlived 4 others. All died prematurely, and thankfully she is dying of old age. But that's a heartbreak in itself, because I have to see her break down basically. And so yesterday, after I made that video, I took a short drive, and my mum and I took her for a walk up in the woodland nearby here. So when I first moved up here nearly 15 years ago, I used to own a house down the Loch Shore next to one of the oldest indigenous woods in Scotland. So people, when you think of Scotland, you think of pine trees, straight up and down pine trees, and that's not indigenous. The indigenous Scottish forest is very, very different. It's spacious, and there are huge Scots pine trees and lots of lower, shorter shrubs and bracken, and it's magical. And I was lucky enough to own a house on the edge of one of the last protected woodlands in Scotland. Unfortunately, I don't own a house anymore, but we took her for a walk up there yesterday, and it's always tricky taking her in a car because she gets exhausted very quickly. But she managed to survive the 5-mile drive, and we took her for a lovely walk in the woods, and it was just such a joy to be there. It's such a healing space, and it's so quiet. And it reminded me of when I first moved up here, and I brought her with me, and we would go for a run through that woodland every day, like a 5-mile run. And she used to run next to me, her ears flapping in the wind. And yesterday she could only manage a couple of 100 yards walk. But it's such a privilege, dogs make us into better people, because in their being is reflected our own pain. And that's what changed my life, because when I first got her in London, my life was completely crazy, and I saw in her behaviour the reflection of my own pain. And to have the responsibility of another being changed me. The welfare of another being, it changed me. So yeah, it's going to be difficult when she goes, but it's all part of it. So we'll have a break after she's gone and rescue another one and go through the heartache all over again. So anyway, here I am again, the day after my last video. I wanted to make another video, mostly because I want to read a poem, but also because I didn't want people to worry about me. I was very sorrowful in the last video, but that's part of this journey, a journey of clarity, and feeling more deeply is to not fear that sorrow. And as I'm able to make more sense of what I've experienced and who I became, largely through learning about complex PTSD, I can see more clearly into the past, and it's healing. You can't change the past, but you can change your relationship to what happened. And so I can see the tragedy more clearly and the brokenness of it all, and it is a sorrowful feeling that arises from that clear seeing. But also I feel released as well. I feel released from the apology that I lived my whole life. When we think everything is our fault, how could it not be? The feeling that I had was if I didn't exist, none of this would have happened. I wouldn't have seen what I saw. I wouldn't have felt what I felt. So, but I know now that I'm not broken. I'm not broken. I'm just well adapted to crisis. And everything that I once saw as flaws, they're not flaws at all. They're just adaptations, conditions. So I'm gradually learning, especially over the last few months since I found complex PTSD as an explanation. I'm learning much more about just understanding why I function the way I do, and it's just such a relief. And I wrote last night, someone, one of my lovely subscribers, bless you all, suggested the work of Bessel van der Kolk, Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, who wrote The Body Keeps the Score. Now, that book has been suggested to me before, but I just wasn't ready to look at it. But Lisa yesterday made a comment and suggested a lecture by Bessel van der Kolk, and I watched it, and then I watched some more videos of his, and I had I don't know how many eureka moments yesterday. So and I wrote some notes. Be chilled. You are adapted for crisis, not broken, not stuck. And I'm learning to see, who I am as a positive, and learning to not judge myself harshly or criticize myself for just not doing well in certain situations. And it's a big relief. It's a big relief. So it is all about sense-making self. But there is a kind of duality to this process. It's the identification and acknowledgement of conditions and character traits and how we function as individual beings. But I think once to speak personally, now I'm beginning to be able to identify those qualities much more clearly, and also to understand the environments which I thrive in and the environments I don't do so well in. It's much easier to just leave all that where it is and just acknowledge its presence and just leave it where it is, and then to just concentrate on the more nourishing aspects of this journey of unfoldment. And for me, that the most nourishing aspect of that is to acknowledge the gift of my life as a created being, and the gift of my soul and the gift of my will, and to seek a more intimate relationship with that guiding intelligence that speaks to me in my intuition, in my dreams, in the offerings of pathways that I experience every day of my life. So it is a mystery, and embracing that mystery is when life begins, I think. So though I may seem deeply sorrowful in some of my videos, make no mistake, I come back to that sort of state of peaceful equilibrium very quickly. And the catharsis of actually making a video, I think Rose made a comment this morning, and she said that I hope that this is helping you, and it is. And each video is like an exorcism. It's like an exorcism. It's a catharsis, and it's nowhere near as painful as it has been for the last 2 years, and it's actually quite enjoyable to share this journey now. So I'm going to talk about, this is just going to be a short video, so I'm going to talk about poetry, because I think, as you are no doubt aware if you watch my videos, poetry really has helped me a lot, particularly the poetry of David Whyte, who, it's interesting because this morning I picked up a different book of poetry, and this is Kathleen Raine collected poems, and she's a very different kind of poet, and I have sort of struggled through this book, and I knew that there was something that I wasn't ready to see in her work, and I couldn't connect with it deeply. And I picked this up this morning, and I just dissolved. The boundary of my body dissolved into the world, and she just took me away, and it was beautiful, the poem I read. So David Whyte has helped me on one part of my journey, and she'll continue to help me, no doubt. Just the fact that I can read her work in a deeper way now is just an indication of change. That's why poetry is so helpful, because it shows you that transmutation of grief and sorrow and pain into openness and presence, and an ability to feel more intimately what's available to us. And that's why poetry is so important to me. So I will say this before I very croakily attempt to read one of her poems. The 3 books I recommend of David Whyte's are this one. I mean, they're all good, but these are, if you just buy these 3 books, you won't need anything else. Consolations, which is just his as a short essay on everyday words like honesty, hiding, regret, procrastination, and his take on each word, it will open up a different meaning. And it's just, that book I come back to it time and time again, as you can see by my bookmarks. And this book, David Whyte Essentials, which is just wonderful. And this one, which is his latest book, which is very different. He wrote this during lockdown, but still has that insight. So this poem I'm going to read by Kathleen Raine is much different to the poetry I normally read. So maybe I shall keep reading her poetry for the next few weeks and see what it says to me. So I do want to say this as well, because one of the poems I read yesterday, which was Rilke, he said, "No feeling is final. No feeling is final." That's a good one to remember. This too shall pass. This too shall pass. Okay, so this is Kathleen Raine, The Spell of Creation. Okay, sorry, I messed that up, so I'll cut there and I'll start again. This is Kathleen Raine, The Spell of Creation. Within the flower there lies a seed. Within the seed there springs a tree. Within the tree there spreads a wood. In the wood there burns a fire, and in the fire there melts a stone. Within the stone a ring of iron. Within the ring there lies an O. Within the O there looks an eye. In the eye there swims the sea, and in the sea reflected sky. And in the sky there shines the sun. Within the sun a bird of gold. Within the bird there beats a heart, and from the heart there flows a song. And in the song there sings a word. In the word there speaks a world of joy, a world of grief. From joy and grief there springs my love. O love, my love, there springs a world, and on the world there shines a sun. And in the sun there burns a fire. Within the fire consumes my heart, and in my heart there beats a bird. and in the bird there wakes an eye. Within the eye, earth, sea and sky. Earth, sky and sea, within an O, lie like the seed within the flower. I think that's just magical. And when I read her poetry, which I've read, you can see I've read quite a bit of this book, but I just couldn't connect with it. I think that just speaks of how shut in I was, in that citadel of protection. And, as I open, I can read that now. And when I read that, like all the sorrow, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's just the minutiae of human experience, and we all feel sorrow, we all feel pain. But when I read that, none of that matters. And like I said, I can leave it where it is. And there's this open relationship to life and the wonder of it all, the mystery of it all. I'm 52, coming up for 53. And my life is just beginning. So it's never too late to face your pain. And, I don't feel like I've missed anything. I don't even think I have regrets. It just is what it is. Shit happens. But when I read that kind of poetry, all the trivialities of what we think is so important, it just falls away. And just to stand silently in the woodland or the crashing sea, gradually eroding the cliff face beneath my feet. Or to watch my dog sleep. Or to put my hands in the earth. That's life. That's the journey. And there is a solitude, I think, to those that suffer from complex PTSD. But I'm comfortable with that solitude, and it doesn't mean to say I can't feel love or I can't experience intimacy. But I'm not broken. That's the most important thing for me to have arrived at that understanding. I'm not broken. I'm just adapted. Okay. I'll maybe see you in a few days. Thanks for watching. Bye.